He thought he was untouchable, a decorated pilot with a spotless record and a sky-high ego. But when he refused to greet one quiet black passenger, he had no idea she was sent by the airline board to secretly evaluate him. What happened next would shatter his career and ego forever. Stay till the end to witness the twist, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. A pilot is the undisputed king of his domain, a ruler above the clouds, steering through the skies like a modern-day conqueror. For Captain Noah William, the cockpit wasn't just a workplace, it was his kingdom. 40,000 feet above the earth, among clouds that obeyed his will, he was untouchable. Every switch he flipped, every instruction he gave, carried authority. Crew members straightened their backs when he spoke. Passengers unknowingly trusted their lives to his calm, commanding voice over the intercom. For 2 decades he had mastered his craft and his image, the golden pilot of Apex Air. Noah's name echoed in company halls like a legend. His picture hung on recruitment posters. Young cadets whispered his name with admiration. He'd flown heads of state, celebrities, even royalty. And each time he reminded everyone around him that he was not just a pilot. He was the pilot. But beneath that perfect smile and sharp uniform lay a truth Noah never faced. He wasn't driven by love for flying anymore. He was addicted to power. He thrived on control, hierarchy, and the quiet fear people showed him. To him, politeness was performance, and kindness a weakness. That morning, Flight 101 from New York to London was routine. The air smelled faintly of jet fuel and coffee. Ground crew hurried about as passengers lined up at the gate. Inside the cockpit, Noah sat with his usual precision, headset adjusted, checklist in hand, eyes steady on the instruments. His co-pilot, David Chen, a calm and respectful man in his early 30s, greeted him warmly. "Morning, Captain. Weather looks clear today. Smooth flight ahead." "Good," Noah replied without looking up. "Let's keep it that way. I don't do surprises." David gave a polite smile, already used to his captain's distant tone. As boarding continued, the lead flight attendant knocked softly on the cockpit door. "Captain, there's a lady in business class, seat 3A. She politely asked if she could greet you before takeoff." Noah raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement flickering across his face. "And who exactly is she? A fan?" "I'm not sure, sir. She just said she'd appreciate a quick hello." Noah leaned back in his seat and smirked. "Tell her the captain is busy preparing for takeoff." "Maybe next time?" The attendant hesitated, then nodded and left. To Noah, it was nothing, another passenger seeking attention. He returned to his checklist, unaware that this tiny act of arrogance would start a chain of events that would shatter his golden image. Moments later, the engines roared to life. The Boeing 787 began its ascent through layers of silver clouds. The world below grew smaller, insignificant. And up here, in his kingdom of metal and sky, Noah felt invincible once more. He didn't notice that in seat 3A, the woman he refused to greet was calmly observing every detail. The cabin crew's body language, the pilot's tone, even the atmosphere among passengers. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Reed, aerospace engineer, former Air Force pilot, and one of Apex Air's newest board-appointed evaluators. She was there on a secret mission to assess how Apex Air's top pilots treated their teams and passengers, and in just 10 minutes, Captain Noah William had failed his first test, without even realizing he was being tested. As the jet disappeared into the clouds, Evelyn closed her notebook and whispered softly to herself, "Sometimes arrogance flies higher than the plane itself." Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a story that would shake the airline from the skies down to the boardroom floor. At 38,000 feet, the sky looked peaceful, endless blue stretching across the horizon. But inside Flight 101, tension floated heavier than the air itself. Captain Noah William sat in his throne, the left seat of the cockpit, one hand lazily resting on the thrust lever, the other flipping through flight data he already knew by heart. Beside him, First Officer David Chen monitored instruments with quiet professionalism. Every few minutes, David would glance toward Noah, hoping for a nod, a simple acknowledgement. But none came. "Everything's steady, Captain," David finally said. Noah grunted in response. "Of course it is. When I'm flying, it always is. The arrogance wasn't new. It was routine. Noah's words carried the sharpness of someone who'd stopped seeing his job as teamwork and started seeing it as personal glory. In the cabin, the crew worked diligently. Flight attendants served breakfast with smiles, but behind those practiced expressions, frustration simmered. Noah's dismissive tone in the pre-flight briefing still echoed in their minds. Don't waste time chatting. Just do your job. This isn't a hotel. To him, they weren't people. They were background noise. But one person wasn't from the background. In seat 3A, Dr. Evelyn Reed quietly observed everything. She wasn't reading, wasn't sleeping, just watching. Her calm eyes missed nothing. The stiffness in the crew's movements when Noah spoke over the intercom, the forced smiles when passengers asked questions. She noticed how one young attendant, Maria, trembled slightly every time she had to approach the cockpit. It wasn't fear of flying. It was fear of the man behind the door. Mid-flight, turbulence hit. Not severe, but enough to make the cabin sway. Passengers gasped. Drinks shook. The fastened seatbelt sign blinked. David calmly adjusted the controls. Light chop, Captain. Wanted to send 2,000? Noah smirked. No need. I've flown through worse. The autopilot can handle it. David frowned. Still, it might be safer to... I said no, David, Noah snapped, cutting him off. You're flying with me, not questioning me. The tension thickened. David's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. A few seats back, Evelyn's pen moved across her notebook. She wasn't writing flight data. She was writing behavior patterns. Every decision, every tone, every trace of pride. Her notes were calm, factual, but her eyes carried quiet disappointment. When the turbulence eased, Noah pressed the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. That was just a minor pocket of rough air, perfectly normal. We're still on schedule thanks to expert flying. David looked down, hiding his frustration. The expert flying had been done mostly by the autopilot and his own adjustments, but Noah had no intention of sharing credit. Hours passed. Clouds gave way to sunrise, golden light pouring through the cockpit glass. It should have been beautiful, but inside it felt hollow. Noah looked at the world beneath him and smiled. You see that? He said to David. That's what I love about flying. Up here, no one can question you. No rules, no opinions, just you and the sky. David didn't reply. He was thinking of something else, the rumor spreading quietly through the airline, that the board had secretly begun evaluating pilots for leadership and ethics. When the plane began its descent over London, Evelyn finally closed her notebook. She had pages full of observations, not just about Noah's arrogance, but about how it infected everyone around him. The landing was perfect, smooth, silent, textbook. The passengers clapped softly, unaware of the storm waiting to begin. As they disembarked, Evelyn stood near the door. When Noah finally emerged, she smiled and said calmly, Thank you for the flight, Captain. I hope the sky always treats you as kindly as you treat people. Noah raised an eyebrow, confused but dismissive. Of course. Enjoy your day, ma'am. She nodded once, polite, measured, and walked away. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her power. And he had no idea that in less than 24 hours, his career would be on the line. Not because of turbulence, but because of how he handled the people beneath him. The door to Apex Air's executive suite loomed large, polished wood gleaming under the soft office lights. Noah William pushed it open, expecting congratulations, a handshake, maybe even a quiet nod from Richard Sterling, the CEO he had once considered an ally. Instead, he was met with silence. The room was vast. A single long table stretched across polished mahogany, chairs neatly arranged. At the far end, 3 figures sat, silhouettes against the panoramic window overlooking Manhattan's skyline. Noah froze. The familiar thrill of authority, the confidence that usually wrapped him like armor, faltered. At the center sat Richard Sterling, composed, calm, every inch the CEO in control. To his right, Bill Sinskey, Chief of Flight Operations, a man who had once been his trusted colleague. And to his left sat the passenger from Flight 101, Dr. Evelyn Reed. The woman who had been polite, quiet, almost invisible in the cabin, now radiated an authority that made Noah's stomach churn. Gone was the polite smile. In its place, a posture of steel and eyes that measured, dissected, and judged every fiber of his being. A leather-bound notebook rested on the table in front of her, familiar, intimidating, a silent weapon. Noah's confident smirk faltered, replaced by confusion and dawning horror. "This isn't a promotion," his mind whispered. "This is an ambush." Sterling's voice cut through the silence, calm but razor-sharp. "Captain William," he said, "thank you for coming. Please close the door and have a seat." Noah walked forward, his footsteps echoing against the polished floor. The single chair in the middle of the room wasn't a place of honor. It was a defendant's seat. His back stiff, mind racing, he sat. Every instinct screamed danger. Sterling leaned forward, hands clasped. "We have a problem of culture. Apex Air promises its passengers an experience of premium service, safety, and respect. But we've seen this promise broken, not by technology, not by aircraft, but by attitudes in the cockpit." Noah blinked. Attitudes? He was the golden boy of the airline, respected, untouchable. Sterling gestured to Dr. Reed. "Captain William, meet your passenger from Flight 101, Dr. Evelyn Reed, 25 years in the U.S. Air Force, a doctor of aerospace engineering from MIT, and, for the last 6 months, a member of the Apex Air Board of Directors." The room tilted. The color drained from Noah's face. He hadn't just insulted a passenger. He had insulted one of the people holding his career in her hands. And he had done so twice. Dr. Reed's gaze held him, unwavering. There was no anger, no theatrics, just cold analytical authority. Noah's voice faltered. "Mr. Sterling." "Dr. Reed, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. On the flight, my focus was sterile cockpit procedures, safety first." Dr. Reed leaned forward, calm but piercing. "Captain, the sterile cockpit rule applies during critical phases, below 10,000 feet, and during taxiing. Boarding, sitting at the gate, exchanging a simple greeting. That is not a critical phase. It's courtesy. It's respect. And you failed, deliberately." She opened her notebook, sliding a folder toward him. CVR transcripts, crew testimonies, operational logs. Every word, every action documented. Noah's mind raced, trying to grasp how his throne had suddenly become a courtroom. Dr. Reed's voice rose slightly, controlled but cutting. "Your actions in the cockpit, denying First Officer Chen's request to avoid turbulence, dismissing the generator caution, mocking protocols as recommendations, not gospel. You turned the cockpit into a hostile place. Your co-pilot was silenced. Your crew is intimidated. Your passengers are disrespected. Safety is compromised, all because of ego." Noah swallowed hard. The words landed like thunder. Sterling added, his tone deliberate, "This board does not gamble with lives, Captain William. Your record may be flawless on paper, but your character is a liability we cannot afford." And then the quietest, most devastating words Noah had ever heard, effective immediately. "You are terminated." Noah sat frozen as the words sank in terminated. His mind scrambled. 20 years of flawless flying, countless accolades, the golden boy of Apex Air, and all of it vanished in a heartbeat. Not because of incompetence, but because of arrogance. The boardroom felt smaller, the walls closing in. Dr. Evelyn Reed's calm authority pressed down on him like gravity. He had treated her like a nuisance, dismissed her presence twice, and she wasn't just a passenger. She was a board member, one of the few people capable of holding his career in her hands. Sterling's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "Your record is not an asset here, Captain. It is evidence of a lucky streak, of incidents narrowly avoided despite your decisions, not because of them. We don't gamble with our lives, Mr. William. Your ego is not a qualification. It's a liability." Noah's throat went dry. He tried to speak, to defend himself. My record, my experience." Dr. Reed leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "Your technical skill is a prerequisite, but leadership, respect, integrity, those are earned. And you have failed to earn them." Silence hung heavy. Then Sterling delivered the cruelest twist of all. "The promotion you were expecting. The A380 fleet captaincy, the office, the salary, the prestige. It was yours, unanimously approved. But we needed someone who embodies the values of Apex Air, not just skill, not just experience, character, That role will now go to First Officer David Chen. Noah's mind couldn't process it. David Chen? The quiet co-pilot he had dismissed, mocked, and intimidated. Now he would inherit the crown jewel of Noah's career. Karma, ruthless and precise, had rewritten the future. The boardroom remained silent, the air thick with judgment. Security guards appeared discreetly, moving to escort him. Each step Noah took toward the door felt like carrying a lead weight. His career, his identity, his pride dragging behind him. In the elevator, he caught his reflection in the polished steel walls. The uniform he had worn as a symbol of mastery now looked like a costume of a man who had been dethroned. The silver epaulets, once a crown, gleamed like a cruel reminder of what he had lost. Back at home, the phone rang. His father's voice came through, frail but sharp. "I spoke to Bill Sinsky," Jonathan Williams said. "He told me everything." Noah's protests fell flat. "It was a misunderstanding, Dad. They twisted it." "Was it a misunderstanding that you berated your co-pilot for following a checklist? Was it a misunderstanding that you refused to greet a passenger, not once, but twice?" His father's words were a hammer. "I flew planes with rivets and prayer, Noah. I never forgot that my first duty was to the people in my care. A pilot's honor is all he has. Your record is meaningless if your character is flawed." The line went dead. Silence. Finality. Months of humiliation followed. Legal fees, professional reviews, endless whispers in the industry. The FAA suspended his license pending retraining and a psychological evaluation. A scarlet letter that would make him unemployable at any reputable airline. Noah's world shrank to a single, cold reality. A small cargo airline in Alaska, a rickety Douglas DC-6, hauling supplies to frozen oil fields. No passengers, no prestige, just ice, wind, and the deafening roar of piston engines. His throne was gone, replaced by an unforgiving wilderness, a cockpit stripped of ego, leaving only him and the machine. The sterile cockpit he had longed for was finally his, but it was empty, cold, and isolating. He flew through blizzards and over frozen rivers where a single mistake could be fatal. His passengers were now crates, his flights measured in survival, not applause. The man who ruled the skies had become a ghost, trapped in a kingdom of ice and wind, forever flying, but going nowhere. And yet, amidst the ruin of his career and the collapse of his pride, a lesson echoed clearly. Skill alone does not make a leader. Respect, humility, and character determine whether a man soars or crashes. Alaska was merciless. The wind howled through the fuselage of the old DC-6, rattling every rivet. Noah William gripped the yoke, staring out at a frozen expanse of ice and sky. Every flight was a battle, not with a sophisticated autopilot or a loyal crew, but with nature itself. The cockpit was empty, silent, and unyielding. The sterile environment he had once demanded on a Dreamliner had finally arrived. And it was brutal. No passengers to placate. No first officer to impress. No flight attendants to manage. Just him, the aircraft, and the unforgiving Arctic. He had everything he thought he wanted stripped away. Prestige accolades, his golden boy status, gone. And in their place? Humility carved into his bones by frost and solitude. He thought of Dr. Evelyn Reed, her calm, unwavering eyes, the precision with which she had dissected his arrogance, the way she had exposed not just his mistakes, but the attitude that had allowed them to happen. He had mocked a passenger. He had dismissed a co-pilot. He had treated safety as secondary to ego, and in doing so, he had lost the one thing he truly loved, the trust of those around him. Noah realized now that his technical skill, his flawless record, and his years of experience had meant nothing. Skill without character was hollow. Knowledge without empathy was dangerous. He had flown planes, yes, but he had never truly flown as a leader. His mind replayed the moments from Flight 101 like a relentless storm. The two-word greeting he refused. The weather deviation he denied. The generator caution he dismissed. The first officer's concerns belittled. The flight attendant's professionalism ignored. Each memory was a mirror, reflecting the arrogance that had blinded him. He had been so confident, so sure, that mastery of the aircraft was mastery of the skies themselves. But the skies, the real skies, were about more than levers, engines, and instruments. They were about people. Lives depended on trust, communication, and humility. Alaska forced him to confront himself. Every landing on icy gravel strips demanded patience, care, and meticulous planning. One small mistake could cost not only the cargo he carried, but his life. He no longer had the luxury of ego-driven decision-making. The cold, frozen wilderness had no patience for arrogance. It demanded respect, respect for the plane, respect for the environment, and above all, respect for life. He remembered his father's words, "A pilot's honor is all he has." Those words, once distant and abstract, now burned with clarity. Honor was not measured by awards, seniority, or a golden reputation. Honor was measured by integrity, humility, and the way one treated others. Noah had flown above the judgment of ordinary men, but the harshest judgment came from within, and he had failed it. The cargo flights became a crucible. Noah faced storms that humbled him, isolation that stripped away vanity, and the silence that forced reflection. He started documenting every flight, every decision, every near miss, not as bragging rights, but as lessons. Lessons in patience, communication, and responsibility. And slowly, the man who had once believed he was untouchable began to change. Not overnight, not completely, but inch by inch, flight by flight, he learned the truth that Dr. Reed had tried to teach him in that boardroom. Technical skill is only part of a pilot's worth. Character, respect, and humility define the true leader. Noah Williams' throne was gone, but in its place was something he had never known: clarity. A painful, hard-earned understanding that the sky is not conquered by ego, but navigated with courage, wisdom, and the willingness to put others before oneself. Noah Williams never imagined this would be his life. The polished floors of corporate towers replaced by icy airstrips. The applause of passengers replaced by the constant roar of four-piston engines. The golden epaulets replaced by frostbitten gloves. He had fallen further than he ever thought possible. And yet, in this desolation, a new kind of strength emerged. It was a quiet strength, forged in solitude and relentless self-reflection. Noah began to understand that the world didn't owe him respect, accolades, or admiration. He had taken them for granted, believing that skill alone commanded loyalty. But leadership, he learned bitterly, was earned through humility, patience, and empathy. It was not about being the king of the skies. It was about being the guardian of those who trusted him with their lives. On one bitter morning, as he prepared to haul supplies to a remote drilling camp, he paused at the cockpit. The wind howled, ice scraped against the fuselage, and the horizon was a blur of white. And yet, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. No longer was he flying to prove himself. He was flying because the lives and livelihoods of others depended on him. Every checklist followed, every procedure respected, every decision measured. He wasn't perfect. He never would be. But he was learning the hard way, that competence without character was meaningless. He thought back to Dr. Evelyn Reed, her eyes unwavering, her voice precise, her words cutting yet enlightening. She had delivered a lesson he could never have learned in classrooms or flight simulators. Ego is the enemy, arrogance is deadly, and respect is never optional. The Dreamliner, the corporate accolades, the power he once wielded so effortlessly, they had all been illusions. True mastery, he now realized, was inseparable from integrity. Months turned into years. Noah's hands, calloused from the DC-6's yoke, became instruments of careful judgment. Pilots looked to him not for bravado, but for guidance. He became a mentor to younger flyers, teaching them not only how to handle complex aircraft, but how to handle themselves, how to respect their co-pilots, crew, and passengers alike. His fall from grace became a story he shared openly, a cautionary tale of what happens when skill is divorced from humanity, and slowly he rebuilt his life. Not the golden life he once had, but a life anchored in lessons, humility, and a deep, unshakable understanding of what it truly meant to lead. The frostbitten Alaskan airstrips, once symbols of exile, became his proving ground. He had finally achieved the kind of flight he had always desired, not sterile, not about control, not about ego, but pure, honest, purposeful, and human. Noah William had been deposed, humiliated, and exiled. Yet in that exile, he discovered something far greater than prestige: wisdom. He understood that character is the ultimate currency in any profession. That arrogance always has a price. That leadership is earned in the small, unseen moments as much as in the spotlight. The world holds up a mirror, and it is ruthless. But those who learn from the reflection can rise again, not to the same throne, but to something far more enduring: respect, integrity, and self-mastery. This story is a reminder to all of us. Your skills may open doors, but your character keeps them open. Your ego can fly you high, but humility keeps you safe. And arrogance, no matter how brilliant, will always find its reckoning. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs this lesson, and subscribe to our channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into stories of ambition, consequence, and real-world wisdom. Remember, skill can take you to the skies, but character determines whether you land safely.